So, some background for this test. I wanted to compare two high damage weapons that were actually relevant in the current meta, and so I figured, what better than the fan favorite Death Laser Arc Torrent 12 versus one of my personal favorites, Graviton Beam 12. If you want to skip to the results, I got timestamps in the video description. So the performances were actually very close, which makes the results not entirely conclusive. So before I get into any details, let's go over some of the similarities and differences between these weapons. Now, I did choose them because they are fairly similar. They both have the recharge reload mechanic where there's not a fixed amount of ammo. It recharges ammo over time. In terms of damage, the DPS and average damage, as you could tell, was very, very similar. I think the main differences are that Arc Torrent does a little bit more damage in the burst of time that it has a full magazine. Graviton Beam does a bit more damage in a full magazine, but it takes a little bit longer to deal it. And it is also significantly less capable of dealing with Ares energy shields. You might think, since the damages were very, very close, even in the situations where Arc Torrent outperformed Graviton Beam has a lot longer range than Arc Torrent. So does that make Does that make Graviton Beam just a generally better weapon? And I would have to say no. They are equal in value, generally speaking. Since Arc Torrent has lighter weapon energies, like 6 and 10 for light mechs, it's ideal for light and medium mechs. Graviton Beam has 3 different heavy weapon types, 10, 12, and 16, which makes it ideal for heavy mechs. They both kind of compete for the medium mech energy, though, especially when you have a maxed out one or one that's like rank 6. Some mechs are better with Arc Torrent and some mechs are better with Graviton Beam, and as opposed to just listing them all out, I'm going to kind of go over what makes one better than another on certain things. Arc Torrent is generally easier to use than Graviton Beam, and it also doesn't really have any major downsides. Its range isn't great, and so that makes it poor for most heavy mechs, but most heavy mechs, the energy outgrows the amount of energy you can get from Arc Torrents anyway. Even though there are some really good builds, like Guardian. Guardian's really good with Arc Torrent if you can get close. The problem is that generally heavy mechs are either slow or they have low HP, and that makes them poor frontline mechs. But like I said, it's usable on basically everything, so that makes it a top choice for most things. Any mech with high speed, EMP, or stealth will always benefit more from Arc Torrent than Graviton Beam, because those are the features that allow you to easily get behind enemies and maneuver to where you can get 1.5 or 2 times your damage from the side or the rear. The thing to note about Graviton Beam is that the implosion damage is an effect. So when you are firing at the back or side, the physical beam damage, the small amount of damage that you do from the actual beams themselves, will get multiplied, but the implosion damage will not, which makes them better used at a greater distance, because you have that distance and, you know, getting close, you're not going to be able to maneuver around somebody to get double damage anyway. And even though they're effective at close range, they're effective at all ranges. Both weapons have 0 damage fall off, which is why I tested this at like 15 meters, just because. But yeah, that makes Graviton Beam better for mechs that have some sort of defensive capabilities. Like, both weapons are great, and you can use both weapons on basically anything. It is slightly more advisable, though, to use Arc Torrent on weapons that have increased damage abilities, because the increased damage is going to help the Arc Torrent. It's not really going to help the Graviton Beam, because it's not going to increase the rate at which your implosion goes off. So generally speaking, you're not getting as much out of it. So the damage boost is for quick kills, and you can get that with Orion, you can get that with Stalker, and you can get that with Brickhouse. Although Brickhouse is a slow mech, it is still very usable with Arc Torrent, because like I said, basically anything is. This is a meta weapon we're talking about. It's like Disc Launcher. You throw it on anything and it's going to perform fairly well, even if it's not really ideal. Arc Torrents are more of a frontline weapon, and you're generally less likely to survive the whole match. So if you're looking for something that's going to survive, you're going to need Graviton Beams. If you have a mech that is capable of surviving a long time, like Panther or Ares or Aegis, I highly recommend using Graviton Beam, because you can get good survivability from those by keeping yourself at a distance. If you use Arc Torrents, then in order to be effective, you have to put yourself dangerously close to enemies. So depending on what you're looking for, and depending on what mechs you have available, kind of determine which weapon is best for you. It's not advisable to use Graviton Beams on light mechs or mechs with high speed. Even though they're still usable, you're just not getting too much usefulness out of them. And you're more or less hindering them by keeping them back and keeping them from being able to be effective. So, in conclusion, Graviton Beam is essentially a longer range Arc Torrent with heavier energy variants that is best used at a bit longer distance. It is equally viable to Arc Torrent, in my opinion, although it is not quite as easy to use on every mech and will not always offer you consistently good results. It's the sort of thing that takes practice to use, but it's definitely well worthwhile once you do. So I hope everyone was able to get something out of this test, and thank you for watching. I will see you next time. Beam!